Hello and welcome. My name is Matt Greer. Today I am doing a presentation on education models. We're looking at the traditional classroom versus an online classroom. This was prepared for my Education 534 class through Grand Canyon University. This assignment is a teaching models assignment where the purpose is to distinguish the difference between and the pros and cons of a traditional versus an online learning. And my instructor is Dr. Michelle Rauch. Welcome. Let's jump right in. Let's start talking about some different learning modalities. So, the digital age, we live in it now. We've seen lots of different, businesses and companies move online, and with COVID-19, we've seen a lot of institutions move online for their coursework. Some of this was a necessity as, their statewide mandates weren't allowing gatherings of more than 10 people indoors. So we couldn't just stop the world. We had to continue going on. And we saw this big boom in digital classrooms and the use of Google Classroom and Zoom and Canvas and all of these really cool learning management systems that we use today. We were able to hold these synchronous classes with students even though we were a long distance away, even though we were unable to gather. And this is something that's been developing over in the past, but it seems that with COVID and this really big need and necessity for people to be able to go online, we're able to do it. So we've discussed some of the pros of the online environment, but it does come with some cons too. It's not a perfect system. We're still working every day to get better. We're growing as instructors, growing as students, growing as a society towards becoming better. But here are some what I think are two of the largest problems inside of online learning. And it's this large learning curve is number one, and it's foremost, and it's most important, I think, that students are not used to learning on an online environment. They may have never had exposure to it. I had exposure to online learning back in 2011, 10 years ago, and it looked so much different than it does today. Today is so much cleaner and nicer. And when I did online learning back in 2011, I did not like it. Had no joy in the program, in the process. And now, with the newer technology and the better LMS, the better learning management systems, and the clearer, more concise organization of deadlines, it's a so much better process. But I think a big part of how you address this as an instructor is you make sure that your students there's availability to have tours of the online learning management system, and if possible to have a sandbox where they can kind of play in and see exactly where do I go to find announcements, and where are assignments, and what is a discussion, how do I make a discussion post. And I think having that ability to get in there and actually play with it and use it before it's a high stakes, this is your A on the line. If you don't know how to use it, I think that that's an important part of online learning. And then the second part is low internet availability. Not having internet means not being able to do your online assignments. It's kind of the limiting factor here in the science world. Now, luckily there's a lot better internet availability than there was 10 years ago, but there's still areas that are remote, or you're sharing internet with several different housemates who find it equally important to their well-being that they have access to it. That can make using the internet a little bit more difficult in those situations. So I would definitely say that is definitely a limiting factor as well. Let's switch gears now and let's talk about the advantages of the traditional classroom, because there are some advantages. There are some things that the traditional classroom does really well. One is the students might feel more connected to their instructors and classmates. They're more exposed to discussions and opinions with peers. They see these people in person, in real time, in real life, and they have discussions in real time, in real life. That means you're more aware of their emotions and their body language and things like these that you don't get as much in the online environment. For science coursework, for my area of study, in-person lab work is so much better in traditional learning, and I think it's necessary due to cost and safety. I know during the COVID-19 pandemic, I had friends who were at universities where they were sending home chemistry kits to do some basic chemistry assignments. That's not nearly as fun as getting to be in the lab. And I don't think that it's nearly as practical either. There was a lot of extra fees that were associated with having to buy those chemistry kits, because most of them were a one-time use tool. So this picture here is a calorimeter. It is a tool used to burn either fuels or food and see how much energy is locked away in it in calories. In my undergraduate, I did a little bit of experimentation with one of these looking at biofuels. And to buy this piece of machinery, it is $56,500 from Fisher Scientific. That's more money than my entire master's program. That's a lot of money to spend on one piece of equipment, and to have a full chemistry lab, there are many more. And it's also dangerous. You're burning substances inside of this calorimeter very quickly in some cases, and with some risk of being explosive. So not having proper training and not having the availability of resources are two reasons why having a traditional classroom with a well-established lab at a university is a huge advantage. This university will have glassware and the chemicals and the equipment that they've procured over decades, instead of you trying to make your own chemistry lab in the garage. So what are the cons of the traditional classroom? Well, traditional classrooms tend to be more expensive, if not the program itself. Moving to a university and registering classes and living on site is a much more expensive. Not everybody has the opportunity to go and pick up everything that they have and go move to a university for school. Personally, I teach at a very remote district where the nearest university is 2 hours away. I don't have time as a full-time teacher working 5 days a week from 7:40 to 3:30 in the afternoon to also attend an in-person master's program. So to have the opportunity to do it online is a much better process than the con of traditional classroom. I just do not have the time. It's better on my pocketbook, on my fuel mileage. And it's not easy to return after you've gone and established yourself in a career, after you start having a family. Life happens and you get busy, and adults usually have some amount of life that's stacked up behind them, which makes for awesome life experiences, but really hinders the planning for trying to go back to a traditional learning and to go to a traditional classroom and attend school 4 or 5 days a week at a university. And then personally, I think it's harder to achieve the same level of self-autonomy as online learning in a traditional classroom. In a traditional classroom, it's really easy to keep your head down, take the notes really well, and just take the tests, and that's your grade. Where on the online classroom, there's typically, from what I've experienced, there's a lot more hands-on. You're getting to take whatever principle or topic that you're trying to master, and you get to put your own spin on it. You get to personally buy into it and choose your education. And I think that's super impactful. I think that educators and students who allow that kind of transgression there really, really are impactful. I know with my juniors and seniors, when I give them the opportunity to kind of tweak the assignment and have their spin on it, those young adults are jumping just at the bit, ready to go. So making it theirs is very impactful, and it's been very, very important for me. It's been something that I've enjoyed personally as an adult learner. So how do we as instructors, and as hopefully a future professor, how do we be an effective instructor? How do we be an effective professor, regardless of the scenario? What are some universal tools that we have in our toolkit that allow us to be excellent teachers? The first part, and this is for adult learners, and for me, I teach high school seniors and juniors, they're almost adults. They're really, really starting to play with that idea of autonomy and having a say in their learning, and they really enjoy knowing why they're being a part of this. And having relevant content, this first point here, having relevant content to the learner is so important. When we talk about androgyny and we talk about self-directed learning and these techniques that these students have to take a hold of the learning for themselves, that the buy-in is so much more important and is so much more impactful. It means so much more to an individual to know why they're learning and why it's immediately useful versus, trust me, it'll be useful 4 years down the road. I understand that there's still standards to meet, and there's lots of creative ways to create curriculum and create assignments and projects that are impactful, that prepare students for real life applications, simulations, and doing essays on potential jobs and stuff like that. Getting them to think about the future is very, very impactful for students. But none of that works without number two, which is you, as an instructor, you need to create relationships, whether this is the young adult, the old adult, the mature adult, or somebody who's come back to school. We all need feedback. We all need to know what we're doing right and what we're doing wrong. We need to be reinforced that we're doing good things. Like even when we're doing self-directed learning, hey, that project you did was awesome. You checked all the boxes. Or hey, you were a little weak on this one. Maybe you need to beef up that section. We need introductions. We need to know who our instructor is, and we need to know who our classmates are if we're ever going to feel safe to share and learn in that environment. That's a part of an effective learning technique. In a traditional classroom, you see everybody. Eventually, you'll start to make connections and understand where different people's walks of life are. On the online side of it, I really like what GCU does, and I really like introductory discussion posts. Just a short blurb about who you are, what you're studying, what you're interested in, just kind of some parts of your life history. It really paints a picture of who you are and allows others to engage with that and get to know you. I think it's a nice way to just get to know your classmates and start to make that impactful collaboration together. And then discussion. In a traditional setting, that happens in the classroom. In the online setting, you have discussion posts. And what I like about that in the online setting is it's very topic specific. And you have time to go and research good sources instead of trying to make generalizations when you're trying to do in-face, person-to-person discussions. You actually have time to go out and find an awesome source on some scientific or education-based process or procedure, or you want to try something in your classroom and you can go out and actually find the effectiveness of it and see what other instructors have done. It's a really cool world that we live in where all that information is accessible. And the last thing that to be effective in both scenarios, regardless of modality, is students need to have the tools to succeed. You're not going to have successful students if they don't have the tools they need. They need to know what rubrics are. They need to know how they're being graded and what points are assigned to how much. Is it all based on the discussion? Is it all based on, do you need to have an excellent introduction, a topic? Is your thesis statement the purpose of this assignment, or is it the essay is equally weighted throughout? I like to give examples of work, of exemplary work. I think that knowing what's expected produces higher results versus kind of shooting in the dark. But I also understand that sometimes, due to the nature of some assignments, they need to kind of be on their toes a little bit, and that's part of the learning process. Students need the proper materials. They need to, if they're taking a chemistry class, they need a calculator. I like to make sure that my school district has extra calculators for students, and in the adult learning environment, maybe that would translate as I would have a series of calculators that I would check out to students. I just think it's super important that students have the tools that they need to be successful. Because the thing that hinders them should not be the tools, it should be the amount of effort that they're putting in. I feel very passionately about that, and I think that's something that's very important to the education process. And then knowing classroom procedures, knowing how long discussion posts need to be on an online assignment, whether or not you're allowed to eat in class for safety reasons. There's lots and lots of different classroom procedures, and knowing them and having them displayed or in a syllabus is a way to just make sure that you and the students are on the same page and you kind of have this contract that I will be a good student, and in return, myself, I will be a good instructor, and I will make sure that you have the tools to succeed and that you are successful as an individual. I just want to thank you for sticking around through this talk. I feel very passionate about education. It's a field that I got into because it's something that I enjoy and that I want to make a career in. As I was preparing this presentation, these are the references that I used. You can see them listed throughout the PowerPoint. If there's something that you're more interested in, this is a great place to start. Thank you for your time, and I hope you have an amazing rest of your day.